Lesson 6.2 is going to be on what are infectious diseases, and it's actually very suiting for our current situation. So let's go ahead and take a look at this lesson. The objectives are as follows. You have distinguish between infectious and communicable diseases. So there are some differences between the two. Describe common infectious diseases. Distinguish between diseases caused by direct contact and those caused by indirect contact. And explain how vaccines work to protect against disease. Describe guidelines for the proper use of antibiotics. So we have 5 different objectives. They're very important. You can pause the video to write the objectives, or if you print it out already, you already have that. You may want to underline it or put notes for that objectives. First, we have to identify different causes of illnesses. So a disease, by definition, is a condition that can damage either the structures or function of your body. For different type of diseases, you have non-infectious diseases and infectious diseases. So they're going to be the two options for the disease, and communicable disease kind of goes underneath the infectious diseases. So non-infectious diseases are basically not caused by disease-causing organisms, which are going to be affected by bacteria, fungi, and all these things like that. These are mainly either genetic diseases or lifestyle diseases. Genetic diseases are diseases such as Down syndrome or hemophilia. Down syndrome, we call it more of disorders, but anything that you get because of your genetic components are going to be part of it. Lifestyle diseases are diseases that you can get because of how you live your life. For example, heart disease or cancer can be a common lifestyle disease because they can be caused by how you live, what you eat, if you're exercising or not, and things like that. Now, infectious diseases are caused by pathogens such as bacteria, protists, fungi, viruses, the things that we've talked about from our last lesson. So for example, we have malaria and tetanus, and some of these diseases are going to be infectious but not communicable, which means, for example, if you get malaria, you're not going to spread that to a person living next to you. However, we do have communicable disease, which can spread from a person to another person. So right now we know that we have COVID-19. That's an example of communicable disease. We have common cold, flu, which is a common name for influenza. We have chickenpox or even STD, which are sexually transmitted diseases. So we have all these communicable diseases. Not all disease that you know will be communicable diseases, but you're going to see a lot of these common diseases that are around us are going to be communicable diseases. Now, we are going to look at different pathogens that are commonly affecting us. The first one is going to be the viruses. These are pieces of genetic materials coated with protein. And the cool thing about them is that they're not dead or alive. So they're not going to go around actively like animals or fungi. They're not alive, but they do need a host to be active. If they don't have a host, if they're just on the surface of a material or an object, they're going to be inactive. And when they transfer to other people or their host, they're going to start activating themselves, and they're going to work against your body. Now, for example, we have viral pneumonia. Not all pneumonias are going to be viral. We have some bacterial pneumonia, and we also have viral pneumonia. If you have viral pneumonia, though, they're going to be shorter than the bacterial pneumonia that you have in terms of how long you're going to have, and it's not going to be as severe. We also have polio, measles, chickenpox, rabies, AIDS, flu. These are all caused by different types of viruses. Some viral diseases can be prevented through vaccination, which is great, because if you get the vaccines, your chances of getting those symptoms are going to be significantly less. We have some common examples. We have common cold, and whenever you have cold, it's going to be probably a different strand of virus because you have at least 200 different viruses existing in the world. And we also have hepatitis, which you usually get hepatitis vaccines, hepatitis B or C, and they are very harmful for your liver. So they can damage your liver, and certain type of hepatitis can actually damage the liver so much that you may have to get liver transplant. You can get hepatitis by having a contact with body fluids or blood, and food and water that are contaminated. So as you can see, the best way to avoid having all these viral diseases, the best way is to get vaccination and wash your hands, because you may have different fluids entering your body without you knowing about it. Unlike viruses, bacteria are alive and they are single-celled organisms. They're not complicated in terms of their function, but they can be harmful. Most are going to be harmless, and some are even going to be helpful. But we do have this small portion of bacteria that are going to be harmful to our bodies. The reason why we have so many different bacteria-related diseases are because we have abundant number of bacteria. We've briefly talked about it when we're going over our first few chapters, our first 2 quarters. We talked about how we have so many bacteria on your skin, on your body surface, everywhere that you are encountering. So obviously you're going to see a lot of different bacteria that are going to affect you. We have some examples such as food poisoning, tetanus, strep throat, and bacterial pneumonia. And we also have staph infection and Lyme disease. We have a list of these bacterial infections, and I have uploaded page 230 and 231 chart for you on Google Classroom. So if you need to take a look at it, if you want to know more about it, you're welcome to do so. So it's optional for you if you want to take a look at it. It's page 230 and 231, and it's under classwork and online textbook. Now we have protists. Protists are also going to be living organisms, and they are actually the most diverse group in living organisms. And protist-related diseases are often associated with developing countries. Because protists are going to live in different environments and often in water, if you don't have good resources to filter your water to make it drinkable, people can get these diseases through drinking unclean water. For example, we also have malaria here for protists, and most of these happens in Africa, Asia, and Central and South America. And if you look into the statistics, about 90% of death happens in Africa because, again, you don't have enough resources to either prevent the mosquito bites or the growth, and also with treatment. You also have amoebic dysentery, which is going to give you painful cramps, fever, and even diarrhea. Just to recap, with the protist-related diseases, they are often with the developing countries because they lack the resources to get fresh water. So if they don't have enough fresh water to drink, they're going to drink water that are already infected with protists and so forth. The last one we're going to look into it today is going to be fungi. Fungi are going to grow typically in dark, warm, moist places. So just think of where molds would grow or mushrooms would grow. It's going to be dark, warm, and moist. Your fungi diseases, the most common one is going to be athlete's foot. And you can get these by sharing your shoes, your socks, and sometimes even when you're walking the floors barefoot, or when you go into public showers or pools. And if you happen to step on the surface that someone else with an athlete foot would step on, the chances are you may get it. Now, not everyone will get these by just stepping on these. If you have a nice environment that's dark, warm, and moist, sweaty, then you have a higher chance of getting these. Ringworm is another one. It creates itchy red circular sores. but it's not actually from worms. It's just called ringworm, but it's actually a fungi infected disease. So how are diseases going to spread? We have three different main ways to spread the disease. So first one is direct contact. Obviously, if an infected person directly touches you and shares something with you, you're going to get the disease. About this direct contact diseases, typically if you have the pathogens outside of the host body, they're not going to survive for a long period of time. And if they're away from their host, they're going to die off. If they contact someone else and transfer to the other person, the chances are they may survive. But the good thing is, if you wash your hands, mostly you can prevent them to enter into your body. A lot of the times by touching, sharing bodily fluids, like sharing your straws and things like that, and also blood. Sometimes blood can transfer these things too, and also sexual intercourse is very intimate. Indirect contact, when you're getting diseases by indirect contact, that means first you're going to have an infected person, and then they're going to transfer their pathogens on an object. And then later on, someone else comes and touch the surface, and let's say they touch their eyes by rubbing their eyes, or they're yawning and they covered their mouth with their hands, and they transfer to the other person. It can be prevented mainly by washing your hands and cleaning surfaces of different objects. It sounds very similar to what we've been doing for our special COVID situation. So wash your hands and clean surfaces so you can avoid indirect contact with any type of diseases. The third way the disease spread is going to be through animals. Now we know that the beginning of this COVID-19 is actually through bats and people who are consuming bats. So we have different types of animals, not just bats, that can carry diseases. Usually when the animals would have the pathogens, they are not affected, but they carry the pathogens. So because they don't have any symptoms that people may have, you wouldn't know, because they're just going to look like normal wild animals or animals. And then once you consume it or once you have in contact with them, you may able to have those pathogens enter into your body and start getting sick. So we have some common animals that we can get different pathogens from. We have dogs and skunks that may carry rabies. We also have raccoons and other animals too, but those are the main ones. We have deer tick that would carry Lyme disease. And we looked into mosquitoes for malaria and also for yellow fever. Now the mosquitoes that we have around us in like California and things like that, they don't really have these malaria or yellow fever viruses. But if you go into more humid and wet, like some of the southern, eastern Asian countries and Africa and things like that, you may have mosquitoes with malaria and yellow fever. Some fleas on rodents may carry bubonic plague, which is also known as the Black Death. A lot of people died from it back in the days, and in fact, like 1/3 of Europe was all swept away. Now, armadillos, random, but they actually can carry leprosy. So that's why the government may regulate some of these animals, or they may go around and make sure that you don't have any wild animals that may spread different type of diseases to people.